Well, first of all, again, welcome to all the viewers of the Strongest Podcast. Today is going to be a very, very exciting episode. The guest of honor has changed. We've been having this podcast previously with Hlib, our GTM lead, but now we have our first external interviewee here, and it's a very big pleasure to have you here. Frank the Bacon. Is it Sondors?
It's Sondors, yeah.
Yeah, amazing to have you here in Helsinki.
Thanks for having me, yes. If somebody doesn't know what bacon means, it comes from the US sales culture of bringing home the bacon. And so that's what we're trying to do that, in Helsinki, but also the rest of Europe as well. Typically, people would typically say, hey, we're bringing home the bread. So there's the breadwinners, But I think it's, the bread is a bit too dry. So I do like the bacon thing a lot more. So, yeah.
Let's go straight into the bacon, actually, because I think something that you have been very successful in doing with your company, Salesforge, is to bring home the bacon, right?
Yes.
And what you've been able to do is, in quite a short time, build, first of all, a profitable business, kind of multiply the headcount by somewhat. I don't know how many people you have, but mostly you've been able to create this kind of money machine over a short period of time. So maybe you could start by giving like a short introduction to what Salesforge is so that the viewers that we have will know.
Yeah, so Salesforge is essentially a stack of softwares where you pick and choose, a bit like Lego, essentially. You decide to pick this and this piece of software so you assemble your stack. So actually every business is different. So you may need all the pieces or you may need some. And so in simple terms, we help you to execute your sales motion, outbound sales motion, specifically across cold email and LinkedIn. Whether you decide to go down what we call the human path and execute that as humans, as a sales team, or go down the path of agents. Now, it's either or. So we're big believers that in the future, where the economy is headed, and which is why we're seeing this sort of what's called SaaS apocalypse, especially right now, and why the markets are trending downwards, is because a lot of the headcount is dropping in a lot of the organizations, and we're seeing a lot more sort of usage-based pricing software is going up, and that's exactly what we are. We're usage-based pricing, so you pick the softwares, you pay for usage, you put it into your company, and then you scale through systems rather than through bodies. So yeah, my background is in sales. So I've been in sales for over a decade. And in my last gig, I had a sales team of 50. And this is where you observe that the only way to actually scale pipeline was just to plow more bodies. That was really the main lever. And all the VCs will tell you, hey, Frank, we need more bodies. We need more pipe. We need more bacon. Let's go. And I always just told myself, why would you scale up through more bodies? Because especially, in sales that for every 10 salespeople that you hire, typically only one person out of 10 is natural. Yeah. 3 to 4, actually 2 to 3 would be sort of a bit like a sponge that can be trained up and then could be somewhat as good as the guy that's natural or girl. And then 60% is what's typically called dead wood. Essentially, these people should not be in sales. They just landed in sales because they were working somewhere, God knows, and then they suddenly land in sales, but they're not really good for sales. Yeah. But you, as a head of sales, you are under pressure to deliver the pipeline. So you're hiring whoever you can. You're having this sort of sifting sort of mechanism where you kind of get people in quickly, and then you sift through, essentially trying to figure out whether they're here to stay or not. But typically, you would say 60% at least. Some people would say 80% should not be in the jobs they're in. And that's what we're solving. Essentially, we're helping companies to scale that pipe with the least headcount possible. Doing this across a couple of channels, and we're looking to add more. So yeah.
Okay, well, let's go a bit deeper into that. So how long have you built it? Like, when did Salesforce start?
About 2 years and 10 months ago. I would say in the first year, so when I dropped out, being as a head of sales, of the company, I had really a couple options: either become again a head of sales for another successful company out of Estonia, or just start my own thing. And I thought to myself, I actually have to make that, that leap and be in my zone where I'm not comfortable, and that's actually, being poor ultimately, right? Because if you're not in sales, you're starting a company, you literally make nothing in the early days. So, but somehow it panned out really well. In the first year we scaled to $3 million in ARR. Oof. We did that with 3 co-founders, 1 engineer and 1 person on support. I would say up to $2 million in ARR. There were no people in the company.
Oh.
So yeah, you just had 2 really smart dudes, one on the back end, one on the front end, and then me doing the go-to-market. So it was the magic combo. Essentially, you have the I mean, in the startup, really, you need to do only two things. You need somebody to ship, right? So to build that
Build the product, yeah.
and you need the other person to distribute, right? It's actually that simple. And if you have two A players at least, one that ships and the other one that sells, then things will pan out. And I believe today you can definitely scale up to a few $1 million in ARR just by having this combination. So that's exactly what we did. I found my two co-founders on the YC matchmaking platform.
Okay.
So typically you find your co-founders because you know somebody, right? Or you have a beer with somebody, your colleague at your work, etc. But in my case, I did not literally know anybody. And because I'm in sales, it's like, a bit like dating. Where can I date somebody, So I thought, what's the Tinder of co-founding? Well, and I was digging, on the internet, and then I bumped into YC, and YC says, oh, here's the matchmaking platform.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
So yeah, you can matchmake up to 15 people per week. And somehow the CTO, who's currently the CTO, he sent me a DM.
Okay.
It was a template. It was honestly not not something that we wanted to do, as in, we're always like, the first USP should be like crafting unique emails. It was all about, we have to kill templates, and then I get this, template from the CTO saying, oh, you're such a cool potential co-founder. We should meet for a coffee, etc. So anyway, so like I did say yes to the guy initially. And so we grabbed coffee, explained, what we wanted to do. I didn't say immediately like yes, because you're like, you want to sort of marinate the idea of kind of working together. He said he has another mate of his, and says, I want to bring in my friend that I know since the first grade at school. Are you okay with that? And I said sure. And so there was suddenly three of us, So
okay.
After that, I met probably with another 20 to 30 also potential CTOs that I could sort of co-found. But it somehow felt that the initial person that messaged me, that was with his friend, essentially, that was like the magic combo, really.
But did you have the same idea of what you want to build initially, or like did you just come up with the idea together? Like, hey, we just want to found some company, and then you come up with the idea, or like how did the idea generation process happen?
Good question. So the idea was always the same. So we never pivoted. The idea actually came from my own struggle as a VP sales. So when I understood that, I'm only scaling through more bodies, there's something broken in the system. Because if you look at from a kind of in your P&L, we're scaling through more bodies. It doesn't feel like that's where the future is going. Especially back then, you had GPT-3, ChatGPT just literally kicked off. And you started to think to yourself, damn, you should be able to scale the system. Why are we scaling bodies? Because you know that the number one cost in every company typically is headcount, right? So I was thinking to myself, what would a new tech stack look like, that would have significantly lower number of bodies, delivering very, very high output levels. Or I was thinking to myself, what if I would give Frank, Frank style of a software that really scales? What if we, what if we would give an A player software? Because the A player software did not exist, but there were a bunch of A players in the market. So that's where I felt like the disconnect. And that's the results, because the software was designed with more bodies in mind. So essentially all the competitors, the legacy software, they still charge per seat. And these are the softwares that are contracting revenue right now. So per seat pricing means ultimately, let's say if you're in product or you're in leadership position, right? And if you're going to be increasing conversions massively for the companies, then you will need fewer bodies to generate these outputs, right? So it's not necessarily in their interests to massively increase conversion rate or output levels, because that means fewer seats will be bought. Right. So I understood that there's no way they're going to be maxing out conversion rates. So you had to think about it differently. You had to think about it from a standpoint of, okay, if they would use my software and I want them to use the software more, it has to be a usage-based model, generally speaking. So the way the software is built from ground up and everything that's being done, it had to be rethought essentially. And naturally with all the AI back in the day, LLMs and stuff like that. So
Let's go later back to this topic of kind of the pricing and how you're combining all the pieces of the infrastructure together. But as a go-to-market person myself, I'm a little bit interested about the team composition, basically. So you found these people through Y Combinator matchmaking. What's the geographical distribution of the founders currently? Is it like you, of course, are here in Europe, but what about the other co-founders?
They're also in Europe. So we met actually in Vilnius in Lithuania. So I would say location also played naturally a part, because I'm not a believer of starting a company being remote. It's, I think, much more difficult. And you definitely have this component of working together. So work together, through many coffee shops, malls, just sitting in the mall there, and going to some random co-working spaces that we didn't have to pay for, stuff like that, in the early days.
Okay.
But yeah, geographically speaking, we're in the same city in Vilnius. I'm myself Latvian, but we did decide, to cooperate in Estonia. So it's a proper pan-Baltic sandwich, essentially.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. What about the kind of team composition now? Because as we've spoken, like your revenue distribution is quite broad, but most of it is coming from the North American markets.
Yes.
So how has that kind of impacted the current team composition that you have? Like, what does it look like?
So, I mean, the team is very distributed. We have people all the way in the east in India and all the way to the west in Dominican Republic and Brazil. We don't have any boots on the ground in the US.
Okay.
So if you have majority of revenue in the US, which is 60-70%, then that means that our teams in this time zone, they work from 2 p.m. till 11 p.m. So they do work the time zones of your ideal customer profile, which is for us US. Yeah. Right. And we believe that if you don't work in the time zone of your customers, then the customer service will suffer. Right. So we always worked pretty much till midnight, like the founders, every day, Monday to Friday, including naturally weekends as well. Because guess what? Our customers are active during weekends. Yeah. So you have to support them also during the weekends. Yeah. Today, we have a support team that runs 24/5. And then we also have weekend coverage. But that was naturally a paramount thing. So we also didn't believe to ourselves that we had to kind of sell anywhere but the US, because I'm a big believer that you have to go into the biggest market on day zero. Yeah. Like you don't build for the Europeans or for the whoever you want to build. You literally go immediately into the US market and you build for the Americans. And the reason why you do that is because it's the number one market for software generally, right? So if you're building for any other market, then the probability of success and the probability of going really big is much, much lower. Yeah. And we were always thinking to ourselves, we're going big or going home. And we definitely want to go big. So to go big, we go into the US immediately. Yeah. And then the other markets like Europe or Latin America, etc., it will always secondary to the primary. So yeah.
Okay. And as a fact, it seems so that now kind of all the decisions you've made in terms of the team composition have been correct, and most of the revenue is coming from the US market, right? So you put more fruit there, or you started to lay the seed, and it's paid off pretty well, right?
Yeah. But we're looking at naturally talking competitors and where most of their revenue is. So you can kind of analyze them. But typically, if you have what's called a sales technology software that you're selling in the market, most of the softwares make most of the money in the US. So you have to, from the get-go, build the features, whatever, for the folks in that market. Okay,
sure. What about the kind of the team? Because I'm also kind of trying to build a team for me and my client portfolio. But what does it look like in terms of directly kind of salespeople versus people that are more in the customer facing roles? Like, what's the split? Like, how much salespeople versus
Good
customer?
Question. So today, so we have about we're getting close to 50 people right now, after nearly sort of close to 3 years, which is pretty low for the revenue that we do. Yeah. But it's 50-50 split right now between product engineering and go-to-market. Or what we call baconese versus broccolis, this is how we call the teams internally. But on a bacony front, what we've got there is we've got 3 customer success managers. Customer success managers look after top accounts. They do the inbound meetings or demos or onboarding. So we're big believers that the inbound front, you should not be having salespeople, but you should be having more the account managers. So the more people that are consultative, they're not there to sell you anything, they're there to consult. So we're big believers that anybody that has an inbound motion in B2B, that should be driven by customer success or account managers rather than sales. Okay. And so we have got 3 people there. Then on the sales front, we've got 4 account execs right now and 2 SDRs. And so just to give you an idea, 4 account execs and 2 SDRs today have higher output than my old sales team of 50, just to give an idea. Because massively, there's so much that has changed. Sure. And then we've got just one guy who does RevOps and GTM engineering on our front. So he looks after 300 plus NA10 workflows, 10 plus AI agents, a lot of different systems, HubSpot, Stripe, etc. And then I think our biggest team, actually, fun fact, is the content team. And so just to give you the split, so we do 60% of the demand, 70% sort of comes from inbound, and then about 30% comes from outbound. And today we generate over 500 meetings per month consistently over the last 12 months. But if I would have to say what's our number one source just for generating demand is actually content. So everything that has to surround around content on social, programmatic SEO just generally. We do up to 200 articles per month as an input. We have 6 websites across 6 different products. So there's a lot that we do on the content front, YouTube front, on LinkedIn front, etc. And that drives a lot of traffic to the site that we then convert in many different ways. So content team would be the biggest, and there's about 20 people altogether.
That is a very impressive setup to build flow. I want to latch on to something that you said, because you're kind of comparing your previous expertise as a VP of sales to what you're building now. And you said something interesting, which was that the small team that you have now, the output that they're generating is kind of greater than what you had with a much bigger team.
Yeah.
By which metrics? Kind of how are you? Is it basically based on?
So it was very similar velocity as well. Like we were in a similar ticket size, similar markets. And my team of 50 was producing about 300 to 400 demos back then. And today my team of 7 produces over 500 demos together. Naturally, what has changed is the fact that you can run a bunch of agents today. You can run very aggressive end-to-end workflows where we're automating literally a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So the funnels are very strong and the strategy is very strong, much stronger than the previous strategy even.
Yeah.
So we would typically, we take the measure of the velocity of pipe in number of meetings that we actually book for the business.
Yep.
That's how we look at, in any really setups. Naturally, when you're in enterprise sales, we're not in enterprise sales, but we're high velocity sales.
Yeah.
But you need to have that velocity and that momentum every single month for the business to continue to grow. And today we're growing 10, 20% every single month.
Okay. Well, one thing that might be very interesting for the people listening is because most of our listeners are kind of really interested in go-to-market and in a more specific way, kind of entering new markets, geographically distributed. So you are doing sales in the US, you're doing sales in Europe, you have clients many places, even like South America, basically. So is there, or have you identified some very clear differences in how you need to sell to these different markets, or the ICPs, the decision makers, are they kind of driven by the same things?
No, they're all driven by more pipeline. Ultimately, bottom line, they're like they need more pipeline. It's like we're not a vitamin sort of software. We're a painkiller, right? So if they don't generate pipeline, they die. So that's why this market is a really good market to be in, because a lot of people want to talk to you, especially if the promise is more pipeline and lower headcount. You're definitely, speaking the language of a lot of CFOs, VP sales that have efficiency targets, etc. Right? So they definitely want to be speaking to you. Yeah. And yes, selling in the US is very different than selling to the Europeans or somebody in Latin America. So for example, if you're going to the Latin American markets, just to give you an example with Brazil, in Brazil, only 5% of people actually speak English. So you know that you're not going to be able to penetrate that market, even though you have a fantastic software. So you do need to have speakers that speak Portuguese to enter that market. Yeah. In Europe, it's less of a thing. I think the only few markets where I think you definitely need to speak the lingo is France, I would say. But then, if you're looking to max out the conversion rates, you do want to localize as much as you can. Yeah. What I mean by that is, in very simple terms, if you're going to send for example, an email in English in Spain, for example, you're going to see, let's say, a reply rate of 2% on average. Yeah. If you're going to do the same email in Spanish, you're going to see a reply rate of 4%. So localization is a very, very easy way to drive performance in different markets. So when we do hire today, we are hiring with languages in mind, both on the sales front and on the account management front. Yeah. And even going actually into support as well. We're looking right now for different speakers. But you are thinking from a localization standpoint because it's the easy way to drive performance. Sure. You're looking at some markets where you have more penetration around sort of WhatsApp, for example. There's even a trend right now popping where you can call via WhatsApp, for example. In markets like Latin America, Middle East to Spain, etc. But it's not of a thing maybe in the UK or the US to be doing something like this, right? So you need to understand which channels are the right channels for different markets, and there will be these nuances. But you ultimately want to be speaking the lingo and the channels that your prospects are using.
Yeah.
So you do have to have the cultural awareness and how people typically do business, right? So, but the way we treat every market, or how we do things, we always think of what's the most, what's the way how you could go to market where it would seem like there's a bit of a pattern interrupt, whether that's the type of messaging that we use or the way we do things, the way we brand, naturally, there's a good reason why we chosen, the whole bacon thing, and the bacon emoji, because we looked at the whole landscape and we're selling to the our number one market, and it's all about the bacon. So if you go to ChatGPT and just type in bacon and sales US, you will understand that, but nobody's using it, right? So like it's the cultural thing, and a lot of people today would connect with me from the US market. They just literally connect with me and says, Frank, I love bacon. Bacon is the only thing I really, really love. And so people just you have this sort of cultural affinity around just the bacon emoji on LinkedIn, that I have, for example, right? So all of these things matter, and so yeah, when you do build out a strategy for different markets, then you have a far higher penetration than having sort of a blanket approach across every market. So localization is one aspect. The other aspect, how we're going to market, we always think of sort of two main ways to go to market. One is what we call the widened approach, where we are targeting very wide, and we have these sort of large scale systems that are set up across email, let's say LinkedIn, where we're sort of broadcasting our message, and we're trying to knock on the doors of every single ideal customer once a quarter. And the reason why you want to go wide is, especially when you have big markets, like if you're not going to go wide with a very big system in place, then you will end up hiring a lot of people. And one of the problems that you have is in sales is always the timing problem. When's the best time to reach out to a person? And it doesn't matter how many signals you're going to use. The best signals are the ones that are typically internally within the company, and that's not something that's publicly available. So that's why I'm a big believer in more of the widened approach, to essentially advertise to your market, to go wide. There's a term, but then to overlay that, where we see the highest conversion rates, will be also to go with what's called the spearhead approach, where you are either leveraging signals or other forms of any form of signals, essentially, to engage with the audience when the time is right. So while you've been advertising, let's say, once a quarter to every single ideal customer that you can in your markets, then when you get that signal, you hit them, with a signal.
Can you give me some examples of the signals that have a positive return on investment for you, for example, and sales?
Sure, like we can take the easiest signals. So the easiest signals would be when a head of sales is hiring a bunch of SDRs. And so we would reach out with a message, and the subject line would read something like, stop hiring SDRs. Right? Typically you get a lot of emails saying, hey, we can help you hire SDRs, etc. But the pattern interrupt with this signal is stop doing that. There's a better way. And the better way is we can massively increase the output of your existing reps, so you don't have to hire these extra reps. And this is how we would do this, So the people are very inclined to listen. How can you actually increase output without me actually getting more reps? So a lot of people will actually want to definitely talk about it. There's appetite in the market. People know what's possible with Claude and ChatGPT, whatever, all these systems. The problem is, I think people don't proactively necessarily dive into these topics unless you actually knock on their doors. And if I would start, another business today, the business that I would start is all about headcount reduction, to be honest, if I would be, starting another startup. So naturally we do something like this, in sales, but generally speaking, I do see a humongous demand in every business, doesn't matter big or small, to implement agentic systems or a lot of automation that actually reduces the headcount. And we're seeing a lot of these sort of signals in the market, let's say by Jack Dorsey, where you're seeing mass layoffs. And that's exactly the trend that we're going to continue seeing, whether you like it or not. So some companies will be more, it will be just slower than others, but it's inevitable. And I think there's one huge business segment that's popping up right now is the one where you can go into a company and you can implement agentic systems, and that's what everybody's looking for. And every company is essentially different. They need a custom system always in place. And that would be another thing that I would do. So I'm always in this sort of Also in my previous things that I was doing, I was always in this sort of headcount reduction kind of mindset. Because, if you even think about like just generally AI, what is AI good for? Well, AI can make humans better.
Sure.
Or AI has the other thing, which is AI reduces the necessity for more humans.
Replace,
and I'm always in that bucket. And I have many of my startup friends that are in the other bucket of actually using AI to make humans better.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of failure on that front. So I do see a lot of signals from the market, generally speaking, when you're building something when it comes to AI. If you go down the route of I'm reducing headcount, you have a lot more success stories on that front than down the route of we're using AI to actually make humans better.
Okay, let's go back to your kind of own go-to-market strategy. So you said kind of two approaches. One was the wide approach.
Yeah.
So hitting every single ICP on a quarterly basis.
Yes.
And then you add on top of it, or on the side, you have this Spearhead approach. So you're scanning that same pool of ICPs constantly to see if there's some signals flagging, and then you get them with the Spearhead approach. So kind of layering these different approaches. But on top of that, you have kind of the content route. And then one thing that, of course, we are a customer of Salesforge ourselves, right? And we are an agency in a way. So you can also sell to a pretty broad range of ICPs. So directly to customers, you can expand through partnerships and so on. So how do you see kind of that role of kind of direct sales versus getting customers via agencies?
Sure. So casting the wide net means typically doing both what's called the outbound piece, right? So reaching out to people, and the conversion rates are naturally much, much lower than on the Spearhead front. And then also continuously doing all things around content, essentially, right? From doing webinars to just being on LinkedIn literally every day. Coming up with a really good post every day is difficult, right? So a lot of people think I have a content writer behind the scenes. I don't have a content writer, but coming up with a really interesting way to say something interesting or like a little angle, that is difficult. So that's why, traveling to different places, traveling to Helsinki, having these moments, whether you're doing a Clay Club event or whatever else that you're doing, and then posting about it. People do follow you, they learn something. And the most important thing that you should do as a founder or just generally as a go-to-market team is to do what's called edutaining. So essentially you're educating the audience, but from an angle that it's that you felt like you enjoyed kind of consuming that content, right? Try and make it funny, engaging, etc. And so people will be more and more inclined to be following you.
So basically taking a page from the attention economy playbook and wanting to make people engage, kind of you need to get their attention.
But it's important that the ICP, so the ideal customers, are engaging with your content rather than just anybody, right? So that's why even it doesn't matter what my reach is. I don't look at sort of reach of my content like it has to be. I'm not doing it for the max reach. I'm trying to see whether the right people are commenting, the right people are seeing my posts, etc. There's different ways to get these signals, but it's important that you always stick to your lane of talking about just sales and kind of what you do as a founder to kind of resonate with the audience. Because guess what? After a year, 2, 3, whatever, people coming to you and say, Frank, I've been just quietly just binging on your content every day. But guess what? They haven't never left a like. They have never commented. But I know they're watching, right? As long as they're on LinkedIn, they will definitely see my post. So that is super important. Now, when it comes to going to market, yes, so you have a product or multiple products like in our case. First thing is how do you monetize that product? So naturally there's in-app experience, right? So you go into the app, you buy something and you're done. 2 is API. And if you are working with agencies or very geeky people, let's call it, they love API stuff, So API is like a must-have. So if you don't have an API within your product, go and explore that. The question is, why don't you have an API? Most softwares have an API, but still a lot of them don't. And then the last thing, which is what we call let's call the LLM consumption. So essentially the ability for you to spin up an MCP server and connect that to Claude, right? And then in Claude, you can just prompt anything you want it to do. It takes the API, leverages the API, and it suddenly makes things happen, right? So first you have to think about how your software could be consumed. It has to be multiple ways, ideally 2, 3, right? So and so I give you an example of how we do it. And then when it comes to customer segments, you also have to think to yourself, who can buy it? And the typical thing is people directly buy it, like a business, like a head of sales could buy it, etc. Then the other way that you can think about it, who could be essentially who could be the middleman of your products, right? So these are typically agencies, freelancers, etc.
Yep.
And that also means like if you're gonna work with these people, then you also have to build some features for them.
Yeah.
So like simple things like we need workspaces for different customers, right?
Sure.
We need billing to roll up to a master account rather than have billing by XYZ, whatever, you know?
Sure.
We want it to be usage-based because we don't feel like paying per seat. Like, so usage-based kind of, has a positive impact on the agents because they're paying for the usage of different customers and it all rolls up, right? So, so this is how you look at that angle. And then the final one is like, you're thinking, who else could you buy your stuff? And fun fact, today we power over 20 competitors because a lot of so if you think about it, you have a lot of valuable tech. And if your market is like humongous, like ours, and it's very, very fragmented, then a lot of your competitors, you'll realize they're not doing what you do. Yeah. And so you could be like, hey, we're doing what they're not doing. We're better, whatever. But guess what? The competitors are not stupid. They need that part of the puzzle as well. So because we have 7 softwares in total, right? Yeah. They may be missing like 1 software, 2 softwares, whatever, 3, whatever. And so they have a choice whether they buy or build stuff. And a lot of them don't want to build stuff for different reasons. Either it's too expensive, right, to hire engineers, and 2, there's a problem around actually expertise. So like if something that you do like with one of the softwares, you are the expert, you're essentially domain expert in that field. It could be like infrastructure or how to manage IPs and stuff like that. And competitors would need to build up that knowledge. For them, it would just take so much time essentially to do that and finding the right person essentially. So there's a higher risk of failure essentially by building yourself. Instead, they could just leverage the API, and the only thing they have to get used to is just working with me as a competitor. But guess what? It gets easier and easier because the more competitors you power, then Frank is the guy that powers all the competitors, So it's much easier than later on. In the beginning, it was definitely difficult to speak to the initial competitors and make them work with you. But this is how you can look at the market. But you just have to kind of ask yourself, who else could buy my product, right? And then you just, simply like with these, let's say tech partners, we just power them via API rather than via MCP, as examples. So,
Okay, well, that's very interesting. And one of the things that many people will be questioning is like, okay, so the Forge ecosystem comprises of how many products is it?
7 in total already.
7. And each of these kind of independently already would be a big hole, something that you could sell separately.
Yes.
Because you have multiple companies only using one piece of the puzzle, right?
Yes.
And that means that you've basically built 7 different solutions, 7 different products. How have you been able to ship all of that in this time and do it in a really nice way that even competitors want to use these puzzles? Like how?
So, I mean, I think, the co-founders, like, matters a lot, right? So one thing is like making sure you have stellar people that ship like crazy. And when I mean like ship like crazy, our engineers are like salespeople. They have monthly targets to ship. So this month we have a target, to ship. We know exactly when we want to ship. Next month we have targets, and people get compensated on hitting targets. We get promoted or not, right? Okay. So we look at that very seriously. So like there has to be what's called shipping velocity, because customers like you and others expect growth of the product. They expect every month something new to be shipped, because they don't want to be with a software that feels like it's stagnant. Essentially, there's no changes, and there's a bunch of software in the market that don't change, and they're very happy with the way the things are. But we all know that the whole space is changing so fast. So there has to be that feeling that these guys are shipping faster than anybody. Yes, you're moving forward, and you feel like if you are with this technology, with this partner, that it gives you the best chances of hitting the goals for the customers, right? So
you kind of get an edge of choosing the best technology provider, for example.
Yes, you always want to work with the provider that's the fastest, arguably, right? That executes really hard, and you feel that speed. You're already thinking of something, and you know that Frank's probably going to shipping it next week or next month, right? So it's that is the feeling that we want to create. So that means we have to release very frequently. So one thing is like, okay, so the engineers have monthly targets, monthly goals. Then you have to think about what is the setup, like the team breakdown. So for different sort of types of products that we have, let's say infrastructure products, we have an infrastructure team. For the data products, we have a data team.
Yeah.
For the core engine, the sequencing engine, we have a sequencing team essentially that looks at how emails get scheduled, how LinkedIn messages get scheduled, what happens, this and this. So, they have to talk to each other because it's about what we call the Apple experience, right? So there has to be that feeling that you're much better off being in this one unified ecosystem than multiple point solutions that overall will be more expensive, less performant, and just more hassle if you think about it, just using multiple support teams, right, to try and solve your pipeline problems.
So one question regarding this, sorry for interrupting, but like where are all the ideas coming from that you use to then improve the product? Are they coming mostly from the clients already using the software? They go to the customer success and then they hit the tech team, or how does it look?
I would say three sources typically. Domain expertise, which is me, actually having been in sales for over a decade and always been in software sales. So you have a good understanding of how software has to look like, both from I'm an SDR, account exec, and let's say a VP sales from that standpoint, at multiple levels. So I think the last person that we just hired said, our product feels like it was built by a salesperson rather than by product. And that is a very nice piece of feedback, to be honest. Because there are products out there that feels like product has shipped it. And then there's another feeling that at the actual user that uses the product, it feels like the sales guy has built this, And that's exactly what I am. I'm the domain expert essentially in our team, where from the very much day zero, I've been telling the team how to build it. Right. So that's one source. And then it's very important in the early days. Otherwise, if you did not have that source, then your only source will be customer feedback, which is our second source. Right. So we have thousands and thousands of customers. So we get naturally all the feedback from support channel is one. Then we have hundreds of Slack channels like with you and others where we can source very quickly insights as to complaints, feature requests. And then we can nicely aggregate and then prioritize. And then the third source is competitor landscape. And this is, I would say, where businesses are the weakest typically. So now in our case, we have hundreds of competitors, right? And we have to figure out how do we continue growing every month 10, 20%? Well, we need to watch the market every day, literally every day. Today, something, for example, happened. Somebody raised today $2 million as a pre-seed company, for example, in our space. And it's in a slightly different space, but I have to think about how will that new company that I know, the founder, etc., how will they impact us as we progress over the next 5 years? So you have to, it's like, playing chess, right? So you have to understand where will the players go, which direction, and how do you get to $100 million ARR outcome by in a few years? What is that you will need to do? Because everybody's raising money, so that's a threat. If you just do SWOT analysis, these players have. This guy has raised 50 million. That one raised 20 million. Right? They're all coming for you, right?
Sure.
Yes, the market is growing, but you need to figure out how do you increase your own share in the market by doing X, Y, Z. So this is also picking the right partners to work with, working with them in the right way. How do I figure out? It's even things like how do I make, for example, my agency partners look better? And all of these things kind of are intertwined in order to increase the overall market share versus the other players that will not think the same way that I will think about, increasing market share. They will think about maybe one little, part of the puzzle versus I'm thinking like big picture, So.
Okay. So after your experience kind of as a VP of sales, this is your first time founding a company, right? And usually first-time founders are not the most successful one, but yours has become a banger. So there must be some key learnings that you've done along the way, right?
Yes.
What have kind of those been? What's the biggest learning you've had? Like where have you had the biggest challenges when you started building your first company? I'm assuming sales has not been the biggest.
I always say, I got 99 problems and pipeline ain't one. So, pipeline was never a problem because, I was always the guy that would do like 10, 20 meetings per day. Mostly just prospect calls, right? And you're just onboarding at a very high level. So it was always a thing, even in the early days.
Yeah.
Well, we've figured out a way, how do we consistently talk to people like nonstop? And so that continues. I even do demos on Saturdays, Sundays, even. Like I remember like a couple of weeks ago, I did 5 demos on a Sunday. So people just want to talk on a Sunday and buy my stuff. So, why not? So I would say, so you have to be in a very, very specific mindset. So like typically when you start a company or in your sales team, somebody has to be what they call the pusher. I'm the pusher. I will push everybody, internally, externally. I will be the guy that will poke and like, come on, what's taking you so long? Why did it take so long? It's like, well, couldn't we move 2x faster, 3x faster? Did we need to use Cloud Code or some APIs? Like, what's stopping us, right? So, and so I always think that everything is too slow. When people think it's fast, it's like, no, I think we could have done it 3 times faster, whether that's hiring more people or more agents. And I'm always asking, and we always have this little framework around sort of solving problems. And I think that has helped us very much. So like when I have a problem in the business, let's say it's not a sales problem, it's something else. We're always thinking about, okay, I have this problem. Is there an off-the-shelf AI agent solution that I can go buy, implement, and see value within a week or 2? Is that a thing? And if it's not a thing, or so then I think in my head, okay, I don't want to use humans. So see, I'm not in the human mindset essentially. I'm like first agent, and then okay, I want to build in a custom agent. The way that I would build that today at least is I'll go and use a bunch of NA10 workflows.
Okay.
Because that's how we started off in the early days. So today we have 300 plus NA10 workflows. An example of a very simple workflow is like a user will sign up today on our platform, and you'll get a little WhatsApp message. And if you don't have WhatsApp, we figure out, then you're going to get an iMessage from us. And that's what we do. It's a very simple workflow. So this is one of the 300 plus workflows that we have in the business. And guess why we're doing this? It's because WhatsApp on the inbound has a 20x higher reply rate than an inbound email that you're sending to your prospect. So now my question becomes today, are you enriching, for example, with a mobile number that email, or are you asking so that we ask actually for number? And then we're trying to figure out whether they have WhatsApp, right? And then we're triggering that, right? That's how it works. Okay. So no AI agent solution. Then NA10 workflows will be next one. Then the third thing is I would actually hire an agency. So the reason why you want to hire an agency today versus hiring your own rep. So let's take you as an example, I guess. Yeah. Like, why would I hire an agency over hiring my reps? Because you need to find the reps that would be really good, that you would not fire them after a day or 2 or 3, whatever, a week, Yeah. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I hired hundreds of sales reps in my lifetime, and I fired 100 plus sales rep in my lifetime. You will fire a lot of people when you're in sales, because people are just not made for sales for different reasons. Yeah. But ultimately, you need to, let's say you have a pipeline problem and you need to solve that fast. You training up reps, you giving them the right tools, you knowing what to do, you knowing how to use Cloud Code, how to use Clay, how to plug that into Salesforge or whatever, having that know-how will take you a long time to figure this out, typically as a founder. Yeah. A lot of founders really are bad at distribution, like kind of scaling up distribution. And I think, let me just hire this sales rep and they'll figure out things. It doesn't typically pan out. So this is how I think about it. I could literally hire somebody and go and spend my time, expensive time, training that it doesn't have to be sales. It could be anything, right? Training them up and hoping for the best. No, I don't think that way. If I have a problem, I'm trying to think, could an agency just solve this for me? So I just plug them in and I would see value like super fast, because they know what they're doing, because they're doing this for multiple customers, right? So that's example with you, and I'll give you another example. So for example, today we have an aim to, let's say 3x the number of subscribers that we have on YouTube within a year. Mm-hmm. And we know that with our own resource, and I have a head of YouTube full-time working on videos, we will not achieve that with the pace that we're going. Sure. So we thought to ourselves, we need the domain expertise, and we need to have an agency in place. And the reason why an agency also is very good is because this agency, just like you can see the performance of other YouTube accounts. So that agency, for example, that we're currently using today, that agency works with Adam Robinson, for example, from our B2B. Sure, They work with other major influencers, and they can exactly see the trends in that YouTube channel, that YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel, and then apply to my YouTube channel. And that's not something that my head of YouTube would be able to do, because he doesn't see the trends and patterns in the other videos, where we need to have the same sort of, inspiration for our videos. So like, that's an example where like an agency is far more powerful, and you need to know why you're hiring them. And Yeah, so that's how I think about kind of solving. Then the last kind of resort is always hiring a human. So agent first and human last is how I solve my problems, and that's exactly one of the reasons why we're still profitable today. Very, very capital efficient, and it would not be the case if I would solve all my problems just by plowing more humans. So yeah.
Okay. And that's a nice framework. I think many people can see value in that. Talking about value of data, you said that one of the benefits of kind of hiring an agency is that they're working with, let's say, 10 plus clients.
Yeah.
Like your YouTube case example, for example. But if there's somebody in the world that has a lot of data on what kind of sequences, is it email only, LinkedIn only, combination of both, what kind of messaging to do, I think you are one of the people because you see the data, I'm assuming, of all the clients in the database. So can you give us some sauce for the outbound experts here? Like how would you approach spreading the word, for example, of a very generic B2B SaaS? Like what kind of workflows would you do? How would you diversify the portfolio? Like how would you structure testing out different sequences? Like what would be your approach?
I mean, initially, if you start from the very much day zero, you go into CRM and you start to figure out, the sort of looking at the initial insights, like which markets we're making money already, right? And which markets are highly converting right now. Then you look at the TAM size of different markets, right? And you're trying to figure out where's the biggest opportunity to go into. And this is where I would typically say it's US. If you're global, it's US, right? If you're European, it's typically UK, Germany, something like that, right? So you typically do some analysis. You understand based on what you're seeing, what is the path forward. Now, we were always doing outbound from day zero. Outbound is super easy. You plug that in, let's rock and roll. Inbound is much slower from SEO standpoint, building out reputation on LinkedIn, etc. So yes, you still have to do the inbound piece. Though what I will say is that true pipeline is being built by using the both things. So I'll give you an example. So let's say if I'm posting every day on LinkedIn, and if I'm building out a better website consistently, day in, day out, my website gets better. I'm always on social, etc. So when I actually hit up a person with, email, LinkedIn, or calling, etc.,
they know you.
I seen your content, man. That's fantastic. Yeah, I would love to have a chat.
Sure.
It's much, much easier. So a lot of people also think that it's about that single channel. It will do all the magic. Or I'll go to an agency and I'll just ask them to blast some emails and everything will happen.
Leads,
Yes. And so I do these calls every day. And somebody says, Frank, I just want to send a bunch of emails and hope for the best. And then so I open the LinkedIn profile, I'll open the website, and you see some very horrible stuff. And you know that some people are hopeless, and I'm just honest with people. I'm always very frank, essentially. Very frank means I was like, did you see your website? Who built that website? Are you looking to rebuild that website? That website is not very converting. You want to look at a converting website? Look at my website, and you give them a call. To some customers, I sometimes give a very cold shower because I know he's going to churn. So and I naturally, I'm a software company, I'm VC backed. I can't handle churn. So I'd rather tell them, hey, listen, go sort out your website. Go do some posting on LinkedIn. So you have a good chance to actually get some responses, because buyers are not stupid. You get an email from a nobody typically. Who is this? Who is this guy? Right. So you're going to go and check out on LinkedIn, who is this person? So I'll give an example of what I did today. Today at 7 a.m. in the morning, I sent 600 cold emails here in Helsinki for an event, right? Most of them don't know who I am. But guess what? A lot of them will go and check out, who is this guy that's coming into Helsinki? And they'll go, he's a pretty cool guy. I gotta go and I'm gonna go to that event, So you have to be somebody. You have to create that, the mini brand or big brand, doesn't matter. But people are not stupid. They will go check you out on social. They will go check you out the website to make that first initial conversion. Like, I'm gonna go and attend the event. I think it's a pretty cool guy, So cool that he reached out to me, right? But if there was nothing on social, nothing on website, the probability of conversion as actually even reply from cold email is super, super tiny. Now, these are the basics, what I call, and a lot of people still don't have the basics. Now, the how would you go to market? So I'm a big believer in doing everything in three, essentially. So where I come from Latvia. There's a saying, "Trīs lietas labas lietas," which means three things are good things for everything. And this is how I think about conversion rate optimization, multi-channel, how I think about converting people. So, for example, when you're looking to penetrate an account, as in reaching out to an account, I'm always thinking about we need to select 3 stakeholders from the account. So typically somebody very senior, it could be like a VP, director, and then like somebody that actually works on that particular area of a pain point I'm looking to solve, right?
Sure.
So 3 stakeholders from account. So that's already 3. 3 ways to reach out. I'm gonna email them, send them a LinkedIn message, and I'm gonna also call them.
Sure.
And I'm gonna figure out how am I gonna do this in the way that it seems okay for them. So I'll give you an example. So I will send initially an email today on day 1. And then on day 2, I will call them up and say, hey, John, how's it going? Did you get my email from yesterday? Right? That's what you would do. If you want, you can also use LinkedIn, etc. later on. But this is an very simple example. You're doing step 2, the calling step, just to ask him about step 1, which is like, did you get my email that I've sent you? And of course, they don't respond typically very fast. That's why you call them, right?
Sure.
So then when it comes to websites as well, right? So let's say you have a website today, and everybody has a site. Ask yourself, do you have 3 ways to convert on your site? So one is, in our case, we're a software, right? Start a trial, check it out. 2 is book a demo with me. It's another way to convert. And 3, bottom right, we have a chat widget where you can go and just call us. So today we receive over 200 calls per month from people all around the world, just calling up. And so either they call us up on the website or we call them, what we call auto dialing, So we auto dial them, they pick up the phone, you chat to them. And guess what? A lot of people still today want to talk. It's just like picking up the phone, calling the office, it's very similar. So we get that ping in Slack and we pick up the phone, we talk to people. So yeah.
I think if there's something that you've been able to crack is kind of the distribution mode. So anywhere you visit, you will see kind of either your face or your company, and then there's something that is tied to you getting in touch with them. Either it's kind of, you probably have some inbound-led outbound flows. You have like all of these ways to get in touch with the people. And I'm a firm believer in that same methodology, basically. So if you have a select pool, select size of total addressable market, the most optimal way to enter that market is to get in touch with those people as many times as possible with the correct message, right? And using as many channels as possible. And that's it. It's really not more complicated than that.
There's another thing that I would add to this is what could increase the probability of conversion rate is actually when you are on multiple platforms. So I'll give you an example. Let's say people can see me on LinkedIn, but they can also see me on X and on Reddit as well. And suddenly they see me sometimes at an event. Essentially, the more touch points you have within the buyer's journey, the higher the probability that they will buy from you. Because once you start seeing a brand or a person in multiple places, you're just more likely to check them out, to buy them, because you're building that trust across multiple platforms. And you believe that like there's somebody. So when somebody asked me back in the early days, Frank, what was your number 1 channel, how you scaled? I was like literally on 20 different channels. that was the strategy. And people freak out. They're like, but how? How is that possible? Well, I said, I have 18 hours in a day. I sleep 6 hours. So you wake up and you start channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and that's what you do. And this is literally like, I know it sounds very counterintuitive, but like that can work for sure. And that's like one of the reasons why we scaled up, because it felt like we were everywhere, even though there's just one guy, there was Frank. Until we started to kind of build up, a team and everything. So yeah.
Okay, so you told many times about your kind of domain expertise, and it was kind of one of the key important factors, first of all, in building the initial pipeline, right? But second of all, kind of informing the tech team on what kind of a solution to build, right? And hence, you have kind of a pretty good vision of what the industry looks like, but also what the industry will look like in the future.
Yeah.
So can you tell me something like, how do you see outbound, GTM, all of this kind of, what is the shift that is happening now, and what will it look like in the future?
Good question. So prior to GPT-3, I used to work in what we call the old school AI. Old school AI was machine learning. It still exists today. You can predict essentially anything. Like what I used to predict before GPT-3, I used to work for a company in New York. And so we used to predict what is the probability to buy something on the website from anybody, whether that was a hotel booking, flight ticket, e-commerce, etc. And that data was very valuable because you can then change the user experience based on the prediction. And so whether you're likely to convert or not likely to convert, let's do this and this. So I'm a big believer that we will see the old school AI, so machine learning plus generative AI, come into play as we're progressing. So the way that it will pan out, let's say later on, so as we accumulate more and more users across different softwares, and as we're getting more and more data, we're able to compute essentially unique emails in any language using Gen AI. But because we're sending so many emails, billions of emails and billions of LinkedIn messages as we progress, essentially the more we send, the more data we have, the more likely we are to do what's called good accuracy predictions on things like, when should I send an email? Should I send it on a Monday at 8 a.m. or Monday 2 p.m.? Well, guess what? You've got reps right now calling people all around the clock, but you're not really sure when's the best time to call. But guess what? If you're going to have a lot of call data, a lot of LinkedIn data or email data, suddenly you can predict when you have the highest probability actually to do something.
Sure.
So A, there's a prediction, and B, then you can use the execution system then to execute exactly during that time frame to maximize the probability of generating as much pipeline as you can, right? So this is how you. So one thing is what we will see as we progress is that companies will be leveraging more generative AI capabilities and machine learning capabilities on large amounts of sales data to ultimately generate more pipeline by doing things at the right time of the day, for example, and stuff like that, right? So this is one thing. Now, the other thing that I'm definitely seeing is that when it comes to actually executing sales, we will see we will continue seeing reduction in headcount. So I'm a big believer that's what's happening, and there's mass layoffs coming in sales. So there won't be that many sales jobs, by the way. Is my take. There'll be just fewer salespeople, first of all, but there will be a rise, definitely what I was describing technical sales. Call those GTM engineers. I even had my own term before a GTM engineer was a term. I call this sales development engineer. And then Clay announced their own terms, like whatever, whatever the term. But essentially, you will have salespeople that are just more technical, more geeky, they're essentially what I call tinkerers. Sales tinker, they like to tinker with Claude Code and build some tables. There's these sort of people, because they don't want to be selling, right? They don't maybe enjoy, they don't get the dopamine hit, from talking to people, and it's fine. So we will see definitely a continued rise of vibe coders, etc. That segment will keep on rising, but the human component will never disappear. But what I'm trying to say is, like, we will have less and less, human execution and more agentic execution come into play. Now, the reason for that is that I would say over the last 2 years, a lot of AI agents in sales were not really good. That's why there was a huge churn rate with all the products, including our own. There's other competitors in the market like 11x, Artisan, etc. All of them were churning like crazy customers because you're just trying to figure out, how to build the right agent. And it's actually very, very complicated. For example, the way that we build our agent is on top of our software. So Agent Frank, which is our fully autonomous AI agent, it sits on top of the softwares that we build. Whereas our competitors, they rent softwares, including competitor softwares, right? So we power some of them. But the problem with the problem with agents is very, very difficult to put it together because ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to do some of the activities that real humans do. But the good news is, even though they were really, really bad over the last 2 years, the compound improvements that were made over the times, suddenly you're at the level where today, this year, the agents start to perform as good as a B player. So, and this is only on channels like email and LinkedIn and outbound, because calling and using agentic systems on the cold calling front is illegal. So voice, for example, capabilities by like 11 Labs and stuff like that can be only done on inbound. Essentially, you need consent. And so what I'm trying to say is, because agents keep on getting better and better and better over time, and humans don't have the same compound level growth, that means agents will start replacing more and more the human execution part. Or in other parts, essentially. It's not just on the sales front, but also in other other orgs essentially within the company. We're talking about finance. We're talking about other even engineering, etc. You will see more. So essentially, we're getting from human execution to co-pilot to fully autonomous. We'll see more and more percentage-wise, the activity is going to co-pilot and then more to autonomous. And so what I'm trying to say is, like, and this is what we're building at Salesforge, is we're building one interface where humans can coexist with agents and execute together, because ultimately that is the answer that everybody's looking for. The VCs, the capitalists, etc. They're looking for more output and fewest possible bodies. Right, that's what they're looking for.
Sure.
And I think that's where we headed, definitely as an economy. So yeah.
So basically, kind of the agentic way of working, doing outbound is going to increase, which means like AI agent Frank will have a much more users, and the quality of the output will be higher. Like in terms of it building the list, crafting the messaging, tying all of these sequences together, making the steps, and everything will increase in capability, right?
Yeah, because ultimately also, if you think about it, an agent can just crunch a billion lines of code within seconds. A human can't do that, you know? So that's why it will be on average smarter. It'll just get smarter and smarter and better and faster and cheaper and so on and so forth, right? So like, it's not something, humans can't compete with that.
Sure.
But this is where you also have to be watchful of the regulation, right? So like, as I said, you can't use any autonomous systems on the cold calling front. So if you are a good cold caller, your jobs are safe, you know? And so, because a lot of people ask me, Frank, what should I do with my career? Like, where should I invest my time, etc. I was like, just get better at cold calling, you know? Trust me, your jobs will be safe. Like AI agents will never touch that. Also things like, you know, being good on LinkedIn and kind of social selling like that will never go away. Being very good at closing customers at trade shows, events, you know, that doesn't go away. It's not like an AI agent can suddenly go to an event, unless we're going to install Agent Frank to like the Optimus by Elon, you know, and then we're going to send Agent Frank to cold walk, you know, and sell something. But there's a bunch of areas that will never disappear. So this is why I'm not a believer that you can fully replace humans. So I'm a believer in the blend, and blend is really the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Like, there's so many GTM agencies out there, and many of them are really well equipped in doing kind of outbound, multi-channel outbound. And immediately when I saw that, like you've seen here, like we've been doubling down a lot on the kind of international cold calling, being able to cold call locally and just make that our moat, kind of our distinctive capability. But in terms of the AI agentic workflows and them becoming better, like if there is one fact in the world is that AI will never be as bad as it is now. It's only improving. It's only getting better. And this means that there's kind of only one realistic scenario going forward is that AI will keep developing and the usage of AI will only increase from now, right? That's going to be happening by fact. So what do you think about kind of the comparison of agencies versus, for example, these AI agents in the future? Because now you have the alternative of, okay, I will either hire myself this AI agent to do the outbound, or I can have and take an agency that is working with like a 6-man team. Like, how would you approach that question? Because for some, the AI agent route is better, but for some, the agency route might be better. So how would you approach that?
So if you have a very large time like we do, we do all three essentially. And I'm a big believer that the smartest companies will have their own sales team. They will definitely have agents running, and they will also have agencies. Not just even one go-to-market, there could be multiple, right? I think the smartest people will definitely figure out how to do all three to maximize to have the true maximum pipeline coverage, because there's advantages and disadvantages, I would say. Now, if a company comes to us today, and we do a bunch of calls every day, right? So we're trying to figure out how do we make them successful ultimately, right? So you see on the call that the customer will never be successful with their own effort. They don't even have the time, nor the sales team, whatever, you know. So like definitely what we call the human path is not the path forward. Now, when we think that the customer has something that is very sort of, let's call it streamlined, something that's very sort of easy relatively to sell, and they have a large volume, then we do believe that an agent probably can do that. Because agents themselves, they have what's called a specific criteria that they need to follow for it to be successful. What, for example, agents are not good at is when you don't have an offer. Agent can't do nothing essentially if you don't have an offer. Then agents don't do enterprise sales. Typically, if you have a 50K or higher ACV, essentially annual contract value, then agents are again not good at that. If you have a complex sales cycle, not good at that. So there has to be sort of certain elements for agents to actually truly succeed. And when you think about it, like, for example, one very maybe simple thing, which is that list building is very difficult today, if I'm very honest.
Yeah.
Like, so agents, like, yeah, in theory they could do the work, but in practice they still don't do the work.
Yeah.
Maybe that will change. Not sure. Hard to say at this stage. But list building, I think, is where the agents then just fail.
Sure.
So and then
depending on the case, for sure.
Yes. So then you need to go down the agency path. So the reason why you would use the agency is because the go-to-market is just very complex, typically. So essentially, the higher the complexity, the more likely you are to use an agency, I would say.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The two is you don't have the competence to even figure out the agent or even to hire your team. That's another one.
Yeah.
And time, I would say time to value is definitely another one. So like you need pipeline fast.
Yeah.
So training reps and telling them what to do seems like the worst option. Agents, you need to figure out how to make them work. So as in, like, yes, you can spin up an agent, but you will need to do a lot of optimization to get the agent towards production, essentially.
Sure. Yeah.
So in a lot of cases, you would say that agency is the fastest time to value. Applies for very complex use cases, enterprise sales, cold calling, for example, naturally, right? So if you're talking to a customer, you realize that, email may not be really good, or like they're not on LinkedIn, essentially, and you realize that cold calling has cold calling has the highest conversion rate generally from all the three channels.
Sure.
But cold calling, for example, has the highest cost, but then it has the highest conversion probability. So you may want to consider cold calling.
Yeah.
But the smartest companies, like I was saying earlier, that if you do the three things, that you want to be doing, which is, hey, I'm emailing people, I'm sending them a LinkedIn message, but I also need to cold call them. Then the agency route with a cold calling component is really the best route. Because the problem, let's say with salespeople, right? When you hire a lot of salespeople today out there in the market, they are just very good at writing emails or LinkedIn messages. Yeah. Most of them are really bad at cold calling. Cold calling, I would say, is the hardest skill to you really harness. It takes a long time, a lot of failure, and it's not just that. It's not just the time, but very specific type of people and characters that you need to have in your team to actually truly succeed.
Sure.
I would say that's the hardest. It's the hardest channel from all the three of them to actually make it work. Yeah. Because on email, sure, you can follow this playbook. This the many domains, set it up. On LinkedIn, this is what I do. Okay, makes sense. Calling, because calling to me is really like two things. It's about the rep and the list. Yeah. Like that's how I think about it. It's very simple. Yeah. Sure, we can build a list, but the rep component, it's not something you can solve easily, if I'm very honest. Yeah. So I think this is where getting the right people calling and them essentially having this sort of hunting instinct. They are the hunters, Yeah. Having the hunters on your team, like you should ask yourself. So like the easiest way is very simple to look at it. Do you have hunters in your team or not? Which is, you hire a person, do they immediately go and just pick up the phone and call? Because sure, they have a commission, but a lot of people just sit down and wait for leads to come to them. They're farmers, essentially. Sure. Most people in sales are farmers. They don't hunt. And having hunters is very, very rare to find, keep them motivated, incentivize, etc. So in our business, for example, we only hire hunters, as an example. Yeah. Because, we believe that you don't need farmers generally in the business. The farmers should be really the account managers, really, that are there to consult customers. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, now that we've been hiring on to the GTM cold calling team, it's definitely not the easiest job. But the benefit is if you already have like a team of 70 people, you have a pretty good instinct on what works and what not, what kind of people can be coached, and the cold calling frameworks that are working. That being said, it's really hard to find those hunters.
But I mean, it's not just that. Let's say I'm a sales guy, right? So you're just trying to think, okay, I get paid per meeting, booked, let's say, as an example, right? Or whatever. I'm just trying to think to myself, okay, today I'm spending 8 hours in my job and I want to book a bunch of meetings. What's the fastest way for me to do this? And if I realize that I'm really good on the phone, I'm smooth like butter, I always say this: you have to be smooth like butter. If you're smooth like butter, you want to be picking up the phone and just calling people.
Sure.
Right. And some people are really good at that. Instead of sending me emails, LinkedIn messages, no, just pick up the phone and call. And so the maximum performance is from calling. You just need to be really good at that.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the other routes that can happen is because we've been talking about this agency versus agent distinction, and you get the time to value more leads more quick if you go through the agency route. But one thing that a agency can help you do as a company is also to build those agents. So for example, for Salesforge, what you could do is equip the agencies that you have to build those agents for the end customers, right? Because they come, they implement the playbook, they say, oh, this is working. Okay, let's build an agent customized for this specific client using your workflows, right? That would decrease the workload from us, increase the monetization for you, and also value for the client. So
that's true. I didn't think of this initially. The reason why I didn't think of this is a lot of agencies are not yet, I would say, there. But you, for example, in your case, you do have what's called a GTM engineering component in your agency, where this kind of makes sense, right? Because you're kind of bolting on the we're gonna go to market with a lot of good salespeople, but also at the same time we're building a bunch of agents to maximize essentially that for the pipeline coverage essentially for the company. So. And actually the customer does not know how to, so we touched upon this. A lot of businesses don't know how to implement the right agents, right? So, because there's so many tools, right? So many LLMs and God knows whatever. Like you could just get overwhelmed by like, what is the setup that I should do? Then yes, you just want to just get it done, outsource it, because you don't typically have the internal expertise, the know-how to actually implement this. And yes, that would be the other advantage of an agency, because naturally a software company like us, we don't have a sort of managed services component. We're just software. Here you go, please pay. And the agents naturally, like many agents, are what's called off-the-shelf solutions. As in, yes, there is some customization, but it's not custom built for every really company. It's built for the majority of companies, let's call it that, right? So that are in the market. And you always have these, I want this to be done in this particular way. So yes, then you can ask your RevOps person, whoever you have internally, whether they can do that. In a lot of cases, they will say no. Because again, like everything that's happening today, for me and you, maybe that's normal, but we're very biased. We live in our own little bubble, I would say. What we're seeing on LinkedIn, what we're the people that we're talking to. But an average company out there in the market is not in this bubble. They're still dealing with their day-to-day stuff, and something like Claude Code or like building agents, it still feels very distant. Let's leave that for later, or etc. But I always say time is money. Like if you're in the US, you always think about you want to be always so many steps ahead of your competition, and from if you implement these agents, actually the benefit is that you're going to market either much faster, or you're generating a lot more revenue, right? So there's that, there's just higher output levels. But there's also the efficiency improvements, right, that you're gaining by implementing all these systems. So the sooner you do it, the better it is for you. So like delaying is not something, this is how I think about it, right? So I try and never delay these things because I know it's going to bite me later on. Right. So, but because, if I wait for like 3 months, 6 months to kind of get this going, well, I lost 6 months of efficiencies, or 6 months of extra pipeline that I could have built. Like, so I personally execute very fast. If I like what I'm hearing, literally the same call, I will say, let's go for it.
Okay.
Because I always think about if I'm gonna tinker about it for a week or two or whatever, a month or whatever. Well, I mean, I could have already generated 10K more MRR, from by having this implemented. I think what founders really generally need to, or heads off, whatever, they need to learn to de-risk very fast. And I think it's very difficult to do that. Like I can just, just like this, just go ahead and make a decision, let's just go. But I think one thing you have to kind of think back of your mind, how do companies like Google think about kind of growth, or other very smart companies? How do they think about growth? Well, in order to truly grow and move the needle for a company, you need to run a lot of tests typically. And in order to have, if somebody has been doing a lot of tests, that typically when you run like 10 tests or so, maybe 1 or 2 tests are like really winning tests, like truly winning. They move the needle for the company.
Yeah.
So in order for you to have more winning tests, you need to run a ton of tests. So whenever I think about working with an agency, launching a channel, etc., I don't know what is going to be successful or not. I have no idea.
Sure.
But saying no to this will be very foolish because I'm looking for more winning channels, tests, etc. to have, and I can only achieve that if I plow ahead and say yes to every test that sounds okay. Kind of in my head, yeah, kind of theoretically sounds okay. Let's go ahead. So the more you're gonna do that, the more you're gonna grow, rather than always saying, "I'm not really sure about this. Let me speak to the board."
Sure.
Oh my God, you're gonna die, and it's not how you will never really move very fast forward. So yes, you need to be more of a sort of a yes man in a way, whether you like it or not, because your company will never grow at the velocity you want it to grow unless you are more inclined to do experimentation essentially in your company. And this doesn't apply with just agencies, just generally everything that's happening in your business. So.
You just accumulate learnings all the time and keep those in your back pocket.
Exactly. So exactly. So you pay for learnings. That's maybe the other way to look at it. Yeah. You invest to learn. So don't look at it as like, oh, wow, we burned X amount of money. Just think of a standpoint that for example, yesterday, actually not yesterday, at 4 a.m. when I was flying to Helsinki today, I was speaking to a guy in the UK at 4 a.m. For him, it was 2 a.m. about a test. That test is costing me 10K, literally. It's costing a 10K test. And we're going back and forward about this test. And we're like, not really sure, like discussing. And I'm asking, help me to de-risk a bit more. Yeah. So, sure, you should ask these questions to help you to de-risk more and more. But at the end of the day, I said, all right, let's go ahead. Let's have a call next week. That's what I said. We had a chat about 30 minutes. That's it. Yeah. In 30 minutes, I authorized in my head, at least in my head provision, I said, I'm going to spend 10K on this.
Sure.
The test, right? So have I de-risked enough? I asked him plenty of questions. It was satisfactory. Do I think it's potentially a failing test? Yeah, I still think it's a potentially, but
sure.
I have never done this test. It's reasonable 10K because a test has to be relatively of a big size, it has to be what's called statistically significant. Yeah. So don't run tiny tests. They tell you nothing. Yeah. They have to be sizable tests or in the volume, budgets, etc., for you to know whether something actually truly works or not.
Yeah.
And that's how I think about, generally stuff in spending money in paid media or something else, an agency here and there. Yeah. Or for example, I'm working with an agency, with a YouTube agency, right? So I said to the guy, yes, I know that you're really good, but I'm not really sure whether you're going to deliver value to us or not. But okay, I'm going to commit to 6 months with you. Yeah. We're just going to see what's going to happen. And by the end of it, we sit down and we review, and then we see whether we continue or not. So I also see a lot of people that do a test for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and that to actually truly see results, it takes time, and that means 3 to 6 months. So what I'm also trying to say is try and run tests with a minimum time frame in mind of being 2 to 3 months. That's a minimum time frame due to either sales cycles or just things have to marinate or progress or whatever. Settle down. The data you want the data to be sort of normalized, and that takes time and whatever.
Yeah. So kind of the time frame needs to be big enough, and also the sample size needs to be big enough for it to be statistically important, and then you can decide if that test was worth it and take the learnings from it. Right? Exactly. All right. Well, I could keep on talking for hours. This has been a very, very nice discussion. That being said, we have an event we need to run to at Maria 01. Too bad when this airs, it's going to be late for it, but maybe next time. Need to plug in, we've been using Salesforge, many of your tools. We use PrimeForge, we use LeadsForge, we use Salesforge, and couldn't be happier with it. Honestly, every single feature request we've made has come pretty quickly, right? Possibly you're getting the same feature request from every single agency, but still kind of very quick time to ship these features. So we appreciate it. And it was a very nice discussion. I really thank you a lot for coming to Finland to visit us. And
till next time.
All right. Thank you.